You just said we're moving beyond matter. I just can't imagine what you mean. Can you try to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, first of all, I can't quite imagine what we mean either. I think this is the test, is to imagine what could that mean. Maybe the bridge concept is virtual reality. Obviously, we're on the brink of building computer-assisted worlds that don't, quote-unquote, really exist, but which we will experience the way we experience dreams or the imagination. And I think this is where psychedelic substances come in. Shamans have always entered into a non-physical realm of information through trance. In a way, there's nothing new here. This is part of the archaic revival.
Well, I feel like, you know, tasting the sacred.
Will you still love me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Are we rolling? I've forgotten the thread. What was it? Oh, is it a human thing? Is it a unique, is this ascent into novelty a human thing? No, part of what I discern here, though we humans are always ready to suffer guilt and take blame for everything going on in the universe, I don't believe this is something we are doing. I think that we are as much corks tossed on the ocean of time as are hummingbirds and prairie dogs. In other words, an event of cosmic significance and importance is going to occur not far in the future. Are we causing it? No. Can we stop it? No. Can we hurry it? No. It's built in to the structure of matter itself. One way of thinking of this is that the laws of physics are evolving to permit greater freedom. And we are, and people have said to me, well, don't you find it a little strange that such a momentous event would occur in human history? After all, human history is 10,000 years wide. The planet is 5 billion years old. Pretty unusual coincidence that human history would be happening when this cosmic event happens. No, that's completely wrong. Human history is being caused by the nearby presence of this event. In other words, if you think of the event as something which has shells of influence, some of its shells of influence reach so far back in time that they drag life out of the primitive oceans. Some of its shells of influence reach so far back in time that they define the emergence of the hominid line out of the higher primates. Some shells reach back to Egypt, some to medieval times. As you approach the present, it becomes stronger and stronger, but I would argue that the presence of human civilization on this planet is the strongest evidence we have that matter and organizational processes are about to make some kind of a leap to a new order of being. What history is the 25,000-year transition zone. Before you enter the zone, you're an animal. After you leave the zone, you're a god. But for 25,000 years, you're kind of an animal and kind of a god. And you're constantly being swamped by your animal nature, and then great teachers are appearing and dragging people back to the right line. And we are schizophrenic in history. A friend of mine once said, history is the shock wave which precedes the eschaton. And I absolutely believe that. And I believe as historical processes intensify, it's reasonable to believe that we are ever closer to the eschaton. If my ideas seem strange to someone, I ask them, can you imagine this planet in 500 years? Given the propagation of ordinary historical and scientific rates of unfoldment and discovery, can you imagine this planet in 1,000 years? No, no one can imagine that, because processes are now in play which so totally rewrite the script that no one can imagine 100 years or 200 years in the future, because the discoveries which will be made in that span of time will so totally rewrite the human experience of itself and the environment that we cannot see deep into the future. And this indicates to me that the future is exploding in an asymptotic unfoldment into a kind of cultural superspace. And our own bafflement at the impossibility of conceiving any real future given the political and social and technological forces in play is proof of that.
Before we go farther, I'd like you to attempt to give me a definition of concrescence and eschaton.
Well, let's go backward. Eschaton first. Eschaton is a good word out of theology. It simply means the last thing. The last thing is the eschaton, and it is everything become one thing. For theologians, it's God. For somebody of a more materialist bent, it might be something else. But the eschaton is the last thing. Eschatology is the study of the time of the last thing. Now, what was the other word?
Concrescence.
Concrescence. This is a little trickier concept. I took it from Alfred North Whitehead. Concrescence is the idea of something that grows together. It concresces, it becomes more dense, more connected, more defined in space and time. And when I talk about the transcendental object at the end of time, or the coming of the eschaton, or hyper-novelty, I mean that the process of the human and biological concrescence of intent reaches some kind of maximum. Concrescence is the end of the process of becoming. Becoming is not true being. True being exists at the concrescence. The kind of being we experience, becoming, is a partial state of being, much like history is a partial state of concrescence. History definitely places us outside the world of biological intent, the animal mind, but history does not bring us into the presence of the eschaton. It's a partial process, and concrescence is what waits at the end. The eschaton is the concrescence.
But we really can't have any way of knowing what that is, that experience of that is going to be like.
No. And the reason why is because asking that question is like asking a man looking east at 2 a.m. to describe the coming sunrise. He can't, because it is literally over the event horizon of the future. And when we look into the future, we see that the east is streaked with rosy dawn, but we cannot conceive of the day that is about to come. All we can see is the dim glow of some kind of eschatological promise. Ask me this question in 2010, and I'll have a different answer.